My guest on today's podcast is karate legend Elisa Au. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Elisa. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Shanae.
It's such a pleasure. Elisa Au is the most decorated American karate athlete of all time. She is the only female athlete in the history of the sport to claim gold medals in two individual events at the same World Championships in 2004. Now a retired athlete, Elisa is a business consultant and entrepreneur. She is also a board chair of the USA National Karate Do Federation, which is the national governing body for the sport of karate here in the US. She is also a wife and a mother of two. Wow, what a an honor to have you on the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, Elisa. You are incredibly decorated, and if you could just um, tell audiences a little bit more about the other achievements you have. I think you were what 18-time national champion. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while. That's what that means. I started karate when I was 5 years old. I was on the junior national team. Started traveling internationally from when I was 14 years old. And then, as an adult at 18, you enter the seniors, and yeah, I've won the nationals 18 times. It's true. I've won three world championship gold medals and then a couple of other silver and bronze. So, yeah, so I competed a lot. And I retired back in 2010. But then in 2017, I thought, well, I'm not done yet. I'm going to try to come back one more time and try to make a go at the Olympics. So I just did come back for another 4 year stint. Didn't make it to Tokyo, but it was still worth it to, just come back and give it one last shot. So I'm completely done from competition now as of 2021.
Wow. I mean, I thought the other phenomenal thing was too is that we both won our world championships. My last world championships I won was in 2004, which
Mhm.
again, that's a very rare conversation that you're having with someone that was on that similar journey. And we both were in non-Olympic sports. And
Yep.
you got so lucky because karate made it into the Olympics. And you came out of retirement after having two children
Right.
to go for Tokyo. I mean, and people tell me that they're like, would you come out of retirement and come back and try to compete in the Olympics with acrobatic gymnastics? Gotten to the Olympics. And, again, at this point, I really don't know because I just keep getting older and I don't know if it would ever, I'm like, I'll be 50, by the time that it comes back around or it finally gets in there. But, what kind of unique journey did you have? Because that's a really interesting pivot and I think a really interesting space to come from when you're in an amazing sport. It has so much popularity. It's such a difficult sport, but it's
Yep.
just out of reach of that Olympic. Like I became honorary Olympian, for example, because they were so sad, I guess, for me and my partner at that time. There'd never been world champions from our sport, much like you. And
Mhm.
so USA Gymnastics and the Federation made us honorary Olympians because they said it's not fair, actually, and that you don't get the opportunity to do that. But what kind of journey was that in I think psyching yourself back up to be able to go. I mean, you even had like an ACL issue at one point
Right.
on your road to Tokyo. And I mean, what was the difference in coming back after that? I mean, if I were you, I mean, I would have tried. I
Yeah. Yeah.
would have. That's
Right.
amazing that it happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that there are so many parallels in between our journeys, um, for you, probably seeing other gymnasts in other disciplines, go have that chance for the Olympics all the time. I can only imagine what that's like. And, other martial arts are in the Olympics. Judo has always been in the Olympics for many, many years, as has Taekwondo. So it's been, a little frustrating to see that opportunity for those athletes, be pretty much expected. Whereas karate, it's been, we've been fighting for it, and we feel like we deserve a seat at the table, because we are really good athletes. And to be a world champion really has been like the winning the Olympics, until
Yeah.
our one debut in Tokyo, and hopefully we'll be back again. But anyways, to the point of like, the chance that I had to come back, I had been retired, like you said, for 7 years, had two kids.
My
um,
God.
I was definitely on the outer cusp of the age, definitely outside that age that was expected of females in my sport. The average age of the world champion now is 22 years old. So I was
Wow.
37. Certainly were women who were in their 30s still, going, but I had stopped. I wasn't even training at an elite level. I was just kind of recreationally training at my dojo. So it was a big decision, but I knew that if I didn't do it, I would have regretted watching everyone else just give it a shot. So that's why I knew for myself that I just had to put it all out there. Actually, pretty proud of how far I went, given that, like you said, I did have the ACL injury that really put a damper on my progress because I came back to my first US Open, I remember, and I won. And not that it was unexpected, but I was like, yeah, this could be a thing. Like I'm not crazy, and I was doing okay. I won an international medal in Austria. I was on my way, and then I tore my ACL. So it was so much harder the second time around. It really was. It was the managing life, managing kids,
uh,
managing an older body that hurt after every practice. But like I said, I do not regret it. I know that if I had sat by and watched everyone else go, in my mind, I probably would be not in a good place. So I'm glad that I went for it.
do you think that the ACL made a difference when you had to come back even from that, within your journey to Tokyo? Do you think had you not had that issue with the ACL, that you probably would have made it through?
I mean, everyone had the COVID factor. So everyone had that year that everything just came to a halt. And we thought we were going to be competing in summer of 2020, and then it ended up being 2021. So, I don't have any advantage or disadvantage to anyone else on that ground, although it did affect everyone. But as far as ACL, absolutely. I mean, you know,
Mm.
I tried to find the best physical therapist. I had the best doctor, and everyone was my team was strong and my team was really rooting for me, but it just took time. I mean, I just wasn't healing. My knee would swell after every practice. It was painful, and I hesitated. It really, because we're a combat sport, so you really got to go for it. And when you have that issue, you kind of hesitate. You second guess yourself, and that can never be a good thing in combat sports.
Wow. That's just like really incredible. Like you are like the story that I wish that I could be. Like everyone in my life is like, that is your story that like never
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the road to the Olympics. I mean, it's just constantly in our awareness and people are constantly throwing that at you. I just commend you so much for doing that, and for going for it. And I feel like if you probably wouldn't have the ACL, you probably would have gone too.
Thank
You
you.
probably would have been, won and been Olympic champion. But in my mind, you are Olympic champion because to me, there was no difference than being world champion and being Olympic champion. I mean, there's just not, I, I, I firmly believe that too. Even though it holds like this different space in people's minds. But
Sure.
what was also too like the journey for karate to get into the Olympics? What was the tipping point for karate, and why do you think it took so long?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I knew what it was. I was an athlete the entire time, and even after 2010, didn't really get into understanding. I want to avoid using the word politics, but just understanding how
Mm.
sports work. So I didn't know, and the story that most karate practitioners know is that, well, there's already other martial arts, so the IOC is not as interested in having an additional martial art. And so we'd have to work that much harder to prove ourselves. The other thing, when you take yourself, not to compare ourselves to other martial arts, but just to compare ourselves to other sports, there's just a lot more sponsorship opportunity, a lot more,
Mm.
TV viewership, that sort of thing. And, especially, I'm talking about here in the US. Worldwide, karate is actually pretty well viewed. It's up there with the other sports. So I think that's just one of the disadvantages. We don't have a professional sports league. That's another thing. So, the money is not there. I know Olympics is an amateur, sporting event, but still, like at the same time, we can't compete with, the FIFAs of the world and other international federations that just deal with a lot more money.
Wow. Yeah, we had the same thing with acrobatic gymnastics. I mean, there was this decision that was made, I think, like in the late 80s, between rhythmic gymnastics and acrobatic gymnastics. And
Okay.
they were rhythmic gymnastics at that time. And I have signed endless amounts of petitions.
Yep.
I have been a part of so many different conversations. We finally,
Mhm.
I think, are on ESPN the last probably decade or so to be able to get that, make our mark in America, because acrobatic gymnastics as well has been so famous and so popular outside of America, but it's been the
Right.
lack of visibility within America that's held it back, which I always think is really
That's
fascinating too. How can it be
it.
popular everywhere else? It's more of a niche thing, a niche
Right.
sport in America, so then that doesn't amplify it as much. We've also too done the demos at at the Olympics as
Mhm.
well. And then it came down to money. I mean, that's why I was forced into retirement. Me and my partner could have continued to win world championships. We were very much undefeated at that point, but we had to stop. We had to get working jobs to support ourselves. We were never getting as much money from our medals as everyone
Right.
else was.
Exactly.
And, so we were like, how many more times are we going to go? How many more Olympic tours are we going to do? And then have to wait an entire year or an entire 4 years before we make money again, because that's
Yeah.
basically kind of the space that we were in. And it was really challenging. I retired a lot younger than I would have, which is again why people kept thinking, because I retired so young and I am still, particularly young, that if it did get in the Olympics, then I could go. But it has not happened yet. And there's just people constantly pushing for it. And I don't know what the tipping point will be either. I mean, we also too have the lack of sponsorships. We've also, they've been through different things of maybe Cirque du Soleil will buy the federation
Mhm.
from USA Gymnastics, and maybe that'll amplify it and help it to get into the Olympics. So there's just like this ongoing dialogue for acrobatic gymnastics too that is, very similar to karate in terms of how many gymnastic sports they have and do they need another one.
Right.
And, is it necessary? Which, people will say, well, that's our favorite one and we don't get to see it. And, not knocking the other ones because those are my great friends. And I would have been a different type of gymnast as well had I not gotten to acrobatic gymnastics, which was very rare years ago, but is obviously much more
Mhm.
mainstream. I wanted to ask you too, Elisa, did you ever consider becoming a performer in any shows after
Oh.
you retired?
Well, that's a really good question. I actually was I mean, I was an extra in a martial arts movie, but I was specifically like highlighted doing martial arts in the intro. It was called Ninja, and a good friend of mine is it was a director, and so I got to fly to Bulgaria, stay there for a week, and hang out with some pretty cool karate practitioners and be in a movie. So that was fun, but yes, it's always this like, oh yes, what if I, went down that road and tried that out, but other things caught my attention as well, like, running a business or, just trying new things. So in ultimately I didn't pursue that as a career.
I have to ask. It's again, it's like it's a very popular thing now too.
Yeah,
Before athletes, they didn't go into into stunts or into circus
right.
or working for Cirque, and now that's a segue that
Mhm.
a lot of athletes will do, and athletes also too that maybe don't get to your caliber of. I mean, I think you're probably just tired and done. You did it all. You did so much. I think if I probably would have competed longer, I don't know if I would have gone into circus. I think
Mhm.
also too because I stopped sooner is also too why I went to circus, because that was where I could use my skill so quickly
Yeah.
and make like a living and make like a career out of it. But I was curious if you did stunts or if you did stunt coordination, because of so how masterful you are, and if you were even in and a part of that scene, or yeah, if you worked
Oh,
in movies, because it just seemed like it would be a natural people, would
right.
natural segue for you too.
Yeah, I mean that the whole Hollywood, industry is really tough, and I just didn't know if I had the chops for it to really, weather that storm. But it was fun. The experience that I had was fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I've even stayed away from high level stunts. I do stunts and I do like commercial work in LA, but I don't do high level stunts just
Okay.
because of the injuries and the
Mm,
risk of injury. So I've taken myself out of a lot of work over the years where people are like, you could do this movie, do that movie. And I was going to do like Halle Berry's MMA movie, and I'm glad I didn't get it. And,
uh,
things of that nature. I'm like, I'll do like a little bit of kids stunting but everything else I just try to keep a specialty.
Yeah.
Just again, coming down to like the injuries, and for me, of oh, it's just like not worth it. I want to make sure I can continue to be a performer, and getting injured so often, which can happen when you do stunts. It's a
Mhm.
really amazing career, but I have a lot of friends that are in like heavily into it, and it's it's very dangerous and there's a lot of risk involved. So I like
Sure.
calculated risk in a different way.
Right. There you go.
I prefer that. I
Yeah.
prefer that. What I also wanted to speak to you about too, Elisa, we connected because we're both advocates and we are representatives or on the speakers bureau list for RAINN, and that is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. And I was really struck by the courses that you give in terms of self-defense training,
Yeah.
um, for people and for survivors, and and I thought that that was really amazing and important work, and especially because we're both from very physical backgrounds, I
Mhm.
don't see people connecting that a lot anymore. I feel like that was something that I used to hear about a
Okay.
long time ago, actually, and it's not typically on my radar. People are usually speaking about the emotional capacities and
Mm,
the other tactics in terms of how to stay away from grooming and abuse,
sure.
which myself, as a survivor of USA gymnastics, I am completely embedded in and year out with our cases and our lawsuits and being an advocate and working with
Right.
Washington, D.C. I wanted to ask you, what is your history and your path in and around being an advocate for survivors? What brought you into working with RAINN and partnering with RAINN and offering these types of courses? Do you have a history of being a survivor yourself? Do you have stories of survivors within karate? Because I do
Mhm.
know that karate has had its own history of cases as well, like USA Gymnastics have. Definitely Taekwondo has been at the forefront of a
Sure.
lot of cases in and around abuse, and how they've been handled, and in conjunction with Safe Sport, which I've done a lot of work with Safe Sport as well, and still do a lot of work
Mhm.
with Safe Sport, which was given power by Congress to police all of the national governing bodies within America for
Right.
youth sports and amateur sports. So I know that's like a mouthful, but can you speak to that? And we will continue that new
Yeah.
conversation.
Sure. Yep. So, I'm grateful and blessed that I have not been a victim of any sort of abuse or attack or anything violence. But one thing I do feel very grateful for is that my parents introduced me to the martial arts at such an early age, and I think that it really formed me as the young or the woman that not young anymore woman that I am. But
You're very young.
as a teenager to a young woman and where I am, it just gives you this sense of security of confidence that I truly believe I owe it all to karate. I mean, yes, a good upbringing, good family, all of that is really important, but just knowing from a very young age that I had the tools on me, my with my own hands and legs to to at least have the right to defend myself. Not to say that I'm gonna overtake a 200-pound muscle man, but that I could defend myself if I ever needed to. And I think that makes a big difference. It's just a mindset shift. And so that's what I really have always loved sharing with other people, is just like how to have that confidence and to give them the same tools that I was given. So, I've always, taught self-defense classes for corporations, for groups and so forth, here in Chicago, a little bit in Hawaii as well when I lived there, but really got into it when my IF, the World Karate Federation, partnered with the UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund, and KIF International. So it's a Koyamada International Foundation. So it was a trilateral agreement where they wanted to launch Guardian Girls, and that's the name of the program. And Guardian Girls is empowering women through self defense using karate. It could be martial arts in general, but we're starting it off in karate. So it started in LA, and I was really excited to be part of the initial project. I wanted to help in any way I could. So, given my experience teaching self defense and just karate in general, I said, "Yep, I'm ready to step up and teach that initial course." So that's what I did last year, and it was great success. People loved it, and it was a footprint or blueprint rather for what could be done in all the countries. So the idea, because it's run by our World Karate Federation, is that they will just, allow each national federation to kind of, almost like a franchise model, like copy this plan, take it to Egypt, take it to Spain, take it to Japan, and teach this Guardian Girls program. You have karate people in your federations who know karate. You can just make some slight modifications and be able to teach the masses some basic self-defense skills using the elements of karate. That's really what we're aiming to do. So I've, like I said, we started it last year. There have been some programs launched all over the world in the past 12 months. And I just went back to LA because we did meet with local officials. That Congresswoman was there to really kick it off, and do it in some different districts of LA starting this fall.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you walk us through a little bit about of how you teach and what comes up during your classes and during your courses, and also too, what types of participants do you have? What are their backgrounds in
Yeah.
coming into this type of self-defense training? I'm very curious again because I come from a very physical environment in circus,
Mhm.
and I think that it would be the perfect kind of course to teach circus performers self-defense. Again, it's not something that we're ever taught. We're taught to do all of these very physical things to impress people
Right.
and to look very glamorous and to look
Mhm.
cool. But the interesting thing is that that could be produced very easily, I think, with that kind of foundation into self-defense skill and self-defense technique that could help you, if you find yourself in a situation that is threatening your personal safety, which
Right.
unfortunately in the circus community, we have been finding out over the past few years happens quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, the bet it would be wonderful to work with a bunch of athletes like the circus community. But I would say right now the majority of women who come to these programs have little to no athletic background.
Hmm.
Some are victims of violence in the past. Some might even be homeless, and they're
Mm.
homeless because they're fleeing, some domestic violence. So this is the wide variety of women that we have in the program. And some are just, maybe college girls that just never learned it, and now they're on a big college campus and they don't really have the skills that they need to be able to defend themselves. So we try to keep it as simple as possible. Like, of course I'd love everyone to learn karate. Like, I'm a big karate, fan out here. um, but if people could just learn a few key elements, like how to use the hard parts of your body, what are some easy tactics to think about, like about running, about using your voice is a very powerful weapon that we forget about, like screaming, asking for help, that sort of thing, fighting nonstop and never giving up, because the likelihood of a perpetrator trying to continuously attack you when you're putting up such a fight, starts to go down, the if you just don't give up. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about in the self-defense seminar. It's not just about let's learn karate. Let's just take those elements, the physical parts of karate, and let's apply them to what some practical things that you can use.
Wow. And so do you think that this, if I didn't understand this correctly, this is a course that maybe all the national governing bodies will be adopting?
All the national governing bodies of karate around the world can do so. For right now, Egypt, Morocco, Spain, and and Japan each have a Guardian Girls program. There will be another demonstration later this year in Ireland and in Hungary, and then after that we'll start going to some other countries that, it really is a problem everywhere around the world. Sometimes we think, oh, it's only in third world countries, but that's not true at all. It's across the board. So that's the idea, is that wherever we have 200 national federations in karate. We're a pretty large international federation. And if we could get a Guardian Girls in 200 different, areas of the world, that would be a really nice thing.
That would be amazing. I think it would also be conducive to have the Guardian Girls in all the national governing bodies. I would love for that to be just like a mandatory
Yeah.
course,
Oh, yeah.
that USA Gymnastics has to implement, or any of the national governing bodies outside of martial arts.
That's
I
a great
think
idea. Yeah.
I think should have to do it, because if I had been taught, how to defend myself as a child, again, I never was. And so many of us as survivors were never taught anything. And so does the program also include children?
Right now, it doesn't, even though yeah, I know the word guardian girls can be a little bit deceiving, but eventually we would like to have it for children as well. Right now, in the pilot
Mhm.
programs, they are for women.
Oh wow. I hope that it spirals down to children. Again,
Absolutely.
what we know, it starts from when you're very, very young, and
Right.
having that internalized that you can defend yourself. Again,
Mhm.
that's something that you came with. And again, for me, being physical from when I was young, that did create a certain level of confidence within myself too, which I think, has definitely helped me throughout the rest of my life, and even helps me now, and probably helped me through my journey as a survivor, to be honest, and having that mental toughness and having
Sure.
some kind of acuity there, even within all of that suffering. What are your thoughts, in and around, the abuse cases in and around the national governing bodies, Elisa, because you are, on the boards.
Right.
What do you feel like, karate is doing, to combat that issue,
Right.
and what initiatives, in conjunction with Guardian Girls, are the governing bodies, or is the governing body of karate doing? And what are your thoughts in and around what needs to change, and, moving forward, what would be a progressive outlook for the
Yeah.
national governing bodies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that our sport, even before I became chair, is doing an excellent job of monitoring and looking out for the safety of our athletes. We are we pass our safe sport audits with flying colors. We follow everything because we take it seriously. Like we want to protect our kids. We know that our sport is co-ed, so a lot of times, like think about how, I started in a dojo at a YMCA. And so I was doing class. I was a 5-year-old girl doing class with like 12-year-old boys. So you just, and a male teacher. So these are the kind of things like we just have to make sure that we are protecting our kids. And so I think that our sport has done a really good job of doing that and following the protocol, following the best practices to make sure that our kids are protected. We also just in the past couple of months, we started the Women's Sports Committee within our NGB, and one of their tasks is to promote the Guardian Girls, here in the U.S. So that's something we're taking it not just within our NGB but outside of our NGB to promote this idea of self-defense. So as a national governing body of karate, we want to be the biggest fans or proponents of self-defense for Americans.
That's so amazing, and that's great work. And I'm really appreciative that you are in that role, and taking action, and heightened awareness, in
Mhm.
and around this issue. And for listeners out there, maybe it's time for you to get a Guardian Girls course in your circus studio, or at your circus school, or in your gymnastics or acrobatic gymnastics gym. I think it would be very, very helpful, and, I'm very, interested to see how this continues to progress through you, Elisa. And thank you again for coming onto the podcast and for sharing your incredible career. You are just phenomenal, and all
Pleasure.
the work that you've done post your career, but staying connected to the sport. I'm grateful that you have stayed connected to your sport, and then you have not left it, and that you're continuing to improve it and make it better and make it safe, for all of its participants. And I'm grateful as well too that your journey, didn't involve, any abuse. I'm very grateful that that did not touch your life, and that you had the opportunity, to just go for it, and have the support that you deserved and that you should have had. So it's just an honor again to have you on the podcast, and thank you again so much.
Well, thank you, Shanae. Thank you for having this platform. I mean, this is excellent. It's great for people to be able to hear, and thank you so much for thinking of me. It's truly an honor. So thank you for having me.
Pleasure. The Live Like an Acrobat podcast is also available on Circus Talk, the inclusive, independent, and international online network for the circus industry. Circus Talk's mission is to create a level playing field for this industry and democratize access to information. Until next time, everybody, I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. Please stay safe.